All right, buckle up everybody, because today we are going deep on the 2025 Zeekr X,
That compact electric SUV that's been making waves.
especially with the recent news coming out of China about those price cuts.
Yeah, it's pretty wild what's going on over there.
We've got a ton of material to dig through today.
Reviews, articles, spec sheets.
Basically everything but a test drive for now.
Right. But hopefully we can get behind the wheel of one soon.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics for anyone who might not be familiar with Zeekr.
Yeah, so Zeekr is a premium EV brand under the Geely umbrella.
And Geely is a major player in the automotive world.
Huge. Global.
They own Volvo, right?
Yeah, Volvo, Lotus.
I think they have a stake in Proton too.
They do. And they also collaborate with Mercedes on the Smart brand.
Wow. I didn't realize Zeekr had that kind of backing.
It's a pretty impressive pedigree.
So they're not exactly a scrappy startup.
Not even close.
That connection to Geely must give them a lot of advantages.
Definitely in terms of resources, expertise, technology.
It all makes you wonder why we haven't heard more about them until now.
Well, they're a relatively young brand, only a few years old.
True, but they seem to be making some big moves.
Especially with the Zeekr X.
It seems like they're really targeting that premium segment of the EV market,
They want to compete with the established European brands.
like Audi, BMW, Mercedes.
Exactly.
Ambitious.
Very.
So how does the X fit into this bigger picture for Zeekr,
It's their entry into the compact SUV market.
which is incredibly competitive right now?
It's a crowded space.
To make things even more interesting, the X shares its platform with a couple of other EVs.
Yeah, the Smart #1 and the Volvo EX30.
All launched this year.
It makes for some interesting comparisons.
So they're like siblings with different personalities.
Kinda.
How does Zeekr differentiate the X from its platform-sharing cousins?
Design is a big one.
Yeah, it's got a very distinct look.
Those flush door handles are pretty cool.
I've read mixed reviews about those.
Some people love them, some people hate them.
I guess it depends on your priorities.
Yeah, some reviewers have also pointed out that the sharp rising window line creates a bit of a blind spot.
Ah,
And then there's the minimalist interior, almost entirely digital.
it's a pretty striking design overall.
They're definitely trying to stand out.
And what about that external speaker I keep hearing about?
Yeah,
That's a unique feature.
you can play animal sounds, pre-recorded messages,
Not exactly essential.
but definitely memorable.
It seems like Zeekr is trying to inject some fun and personality into the EV space.
I think that's a smart move.
But what about the driving experience?
The reviews I've read describe it as refined and comfortable.
So, not a sports car.
Not really, more of a cruiser.
Okay, that makes sense.
The entry-level model has 268 horsepower.
And you can go from 0 to 100 kilometers in 5.8 seconds.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
But the emphasis seems to be on a smooth, comfortable ride.
Which probably appeals to their target audience.
Yeah, people who prioritize a premium, relaxed experience.
Speaking of which, let's talk about those price cuts in China.
Yeah, that was a big move.
25% off.
It sent shockwaves through the industry.
I wonder how they're able to offer those kinds of discounts.
It's probably a combination of factors.
Geely's vast manufacturing network,
That's probably part of it.
innovative battery technologies,
Maybe.
streamlined features.
Possibly.
It's hard to say for sure,
It's a very strategic move.
especially in a market as competitive as China.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It will, and speaking of interesting, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something else.
Okay, what is it?
These price cuts in China, it just keeps coming back to that for me.
Yeah, it's a bold move.
What stood out to you about the whole situation?
Well, I think it highlights the incredible pace of innovation in the EV market.
Especially in China.
It's like a whole different ballgame over there.
They're really pushing the boundaries,
And Zeekr seems to be right at the forefront.
trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
It's exciting to watch, but also a little nerve-wracking.
I know what you mean. It's like anything could happen.
And that brings us to a question that's probably on a lot of our listeners' minds.
Okay, what's the question?
For someone who's maybe thinking about buying a compact EV, should the Zeekr X even be on their radar?
It's a tough one to answer.
There are so many great options available right now.
From established brands like Hyundai and Kia to other up-and-coming Chinese brands like BYD and XPeng.
And of course, we can't forget about Tesla.
Yeah, there's still a major force in the market.
So how does the Zeekr X stand out from the crowd?
That's the key question, isn't it?
It's a crowded market.
They need to offer something truly special.
It's like trying to be the breakout star in a room full of talented performers.
Exactly. And Zeekr seems to be betting that their combination of design, technology, and now aggressive pricing will be enough to capture people's attention.
We'll have to see how it plays out.
Only time will tell.
But one thing's for sure, the Zeekr X is a car worth watching.
Right.
It's a fascinating story.
And we're just getting started.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dig even deeper into the Zeekr X.
Sounds good to me.
It's almost like they're playing chess while everyone else is stuck playing checkers.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
But even with these aggressive price cuts,
Right.
will it be enough to win over buyers outside of China?
That's the big question, isn't it?
I mean, they've dipped their toes into the European market.
Yeah, they've launched in a few countries.
The Netherlands,
Sweden.
Norway.
They're testing the waters.
But what about North America?
Any word on when we might see the Zeekr X over here?
So far, Zeekr has been pretty quiet about their North American plans.
Huh. Interesting.
There's been some speculation, of course,
Always is.
but nothing concrete.
Well, that's certainly something to keep an eye on.
It is.
But let's say they do decide to enter the North American market.
Right.
They'll be facing a whole different set of challenges.
Absolutely.
The competition is fierce.
And consumer preferences are different. Plus, there's the whole regulatory landscape.
It's a whole new ballgame.
And let's not forget about the perception of Chinese brands in general.
Yeah. That's a hurdle they'll have to overcome.
There are still some concerns about quality, reliability,
Data security,
especially in Western markets.
it's a challenge for sure.
So even with Geely's global reach and all their resources,
Right.
Zeekr still has their work cut out for them if they want to make a real impact globally.
It's a steep climb, no doubt.
But they've shown they're not afraid to make bold moves.
It's like those price cuts in China.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how they adapt their strategy for different markets.
And will.
Speaking of bold moves, I keep coming back to that.
The price cuts.
Yeah. What stood out to you about that whole situation?
What I find fascinating is how it highlights the incredible pace of innovation and competition in the EV market.
Especially in China.
It's a completely different landscape over there.
You have established players like Tesla facing serious challenges from domestic brands.
Who are offering compelling products at incredibly competitive prices.
It's like the whole industry is in a constant state of flux.
And Zeekr is trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And that makes it incredibly difficult to predict what will happen next.
It does.
Will these price cuts be enough to propel the Zeekr X to the top of the Chinese market?
And are those prices even sustainable in the long run?
It's a gamble, for sure.
It is.
But sometimes the biggest risks yield the biggest rewards.
That's true.
Okay, so we've talked about the Zeekr X's strengths and weaknesses,
Challenges it faces.
both in China and globally.
That big question mark hanging over its future.
What else should we be considering here?
I think it's important to remember that the automotive landscape is in a constant state of evolution.
It's like trying to hit a moving target, as you said earlier,
Exactly. So any decision about buying a car
especially in EV.
requires a lot of thought, a long-term perspective.
You can't just look at the specs and features that are available today.
Correct.
You have to think about what the ownership experience will be like 5, even 10 years down the road.
Will the technology hold up?
Will the charging infrastructure keep pace?
Will the brand even be around?
Those are all valid questions.
And it's something for any potential buyer to consider.
Not just those interested in the Zeekr X.
Exactly.
But in the case of the Zeekr X, there's an added layer of uncertainty because they're a relatively new player.
And their long-term viability is still an open question.
So for our listener, what does this all mean?
How do they make sense of all this information and decide whether the Zeekr X is worth considering?
Right. It's a lot to take in.
They need to weigh the potential rewards against the risks.
Are they comfortable with the uncertainty that comes with a new brand?
Are the features and technology compelling enough to make them take a chance?
And perhaps more importantly, are they willing to bet on a brand that's trying to disrupt the established order,
That's a great way to put it.
to rewrite the rules of the automotive game?
The Zeekr X isn't just a car, it's a statement.
A statement about innovation, ambition,
And the rapidly changing landscape of the global automotive industry.
and whether that statement resonates with you, whether you choose to buy into it, that's a personal decision.
It all comes down to individual needs, priorities.
And frankly, how much risk you're willing to take on.
Because at the end of the day, the best car for you is the one that aligns with your lifestyle and your vision for the future.
Well said.
Thank you.
It's funny. We've gone through all these specs and performance figures and the market analysis,
Right.
but sometimes,
Sometimes it comes down to more than just numbers, I think.
yeah, like that gut feeling.
The human element, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Data can tell us so much.
But there's that X factor that you can't really quantify.
That you can't put into a spreadsheet.
And for me, what this deep dive has really highlighted is that
Yeah,
Zeekr is more than just another EV company trying to cash in on a trend.
I agree.
They seem to have a vision
The sense of purpose.
that goes beyond just selling cars.
It's refreshing, actually.
It is. And their vision seems to be about redefining what premium means in the EV space.
It's not just about luxury in the traditional sense.
Right. It's not just about fancy leather seats and wood trim.
Exactly.
It's about technology.
Seamlessly integrated technology.
And a design language that's bold and unapologetic.
They're not afraid to take risks.
And they're not afraid to make bold moves to achieve their goals.
Like those price cuts in China.
Exactly. They're willing to disrupt the market,
To shake things up.
to get noticed.
Which is essential when you're going up against the giants of the industry.
But it's also risky.
There's no guarantee it'll pay off.
So, for our listener, if you're someone who's drawn to cutting-edge tech,
Distinctive
a
design,
bit of a rebellious spirit,
maybe,
then Zeekr
and the X in particular,
becomes a very intriguing proposition.
it's a bit like a high-stakes investment in the future of mobility.
It's exciting to see a brand like Zeekr come onto the scene and challenge the status quo.
It is, whether they ultimately succeed or not.
They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the EV world.
And that kind of innovation benefits everyone, even those who never end up behind the wheel of a Zeekr.
It's like they're raising the bar for the entire industry,
Absolutely.
forcing everyone to step up their game.
Makes you wonder,
What's next?
how much are we willing to embrace new brands and new ideas in a world that's constantly changing?
That's the real deep dive, isn't it?
It's not just about understanding a car
It's about understanding the forces that are shaping our future.
and being open to new possibilities.
And that future is undoubtedly going to be electric
Connected.
and full of surprises.
So for you listening,
What does this all mean?
what have this deep dive into the world of the Zeekr X sparked for you?
Has it shifted your perspective on the EV landscape?
Has it made you question your assumptions about Chinese brands?
Has it ignited a sense of curiosity about what the future holds?
Only you can answer those questions.
But hopefully this conversation has given you some food for thought.
And maybe even inspired you to take a closer look at Zeekr and the X.
Because in a world that's increasingly defined by innovation and disruption,
It's the brands that dare to be different
that dare to challenge the norm
that ultimately capture our attention.
and shape the future.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you?
That's a question only you can answer.
But we hope this deep dive into the world of the Zeekr X has provided some valuable insights.
And maybe even sparked a bit of that what if curiosity.
Thanks for joining us.